I finally broke the habit that embarrassed me, and that is when I realized, it was the only thing reminding me who I used to be. Evan Cole had a habit he wanted gone, and he believed it was small, he believed it was harmless, he believed it was stupid. Every morning before light filled the room his hand moved to his wrist, 2 fingers pressed the same place always. The motion was quiet, the motion was private, it felt older than thought. He told himself it was nothing, a leftover reflex, a bad loop the kind people erase with effort. He tried to stop, he watched his hand, he tightened his jaw, he smiled at the mirror like someone who had control. Days passed, the habit returned, nights passed, the habit stayed with him, he replaced it with others. A deep breath, a slow count, a glass of water. The wrist stayed untouched and something inside him shifted softly like a chair moved in another room. Evan felt proud, he felt clean, he felt less noisy inside. The world sounded sharper, meetings felt easier, his voice felt steady, but the mornings grew thin, the air felt empty. He woke without warmth, without weight. He stopped touching the wrist and stopped remembering why the mark was there. He assumed forgetting was success, he assumed silence was strength, he assumed the past was only a story people tell themselves to feel special. The habit faded, and with it small sparks vanished. Music felt flat, colors felt distant, laughter arrived late and left early. Evan did not panic, he adjusted, he always adjusted. He had learned that skill early in life. He learned how to hide without moving, how to stay without being seen. The habit had once followed him through that time when he was younger, when names changed, when rooms changed, when safety was a question he no longer asked. Touching the wrist was never about skin, it was about anchoring, it was about proof that someone had survived, that someone was still present. When he stopped the motion, the proof dissolved gently, quietly, politely. Evan stood by the window one morning and felt like a guest in his own body. The city moved, cars passed, light shifted, and he could not tell what part of him was watching or why. His reflection looked calm and unfamiliar. At the same time he smiled anyway, because that was also a habit, and this one he never questioned. The silence did not arrive like a storm, it arrived like fog. Evan noticed it in small ways. First the pause before emotions, the delay before reaction. Someone joked and he smiled a second too late. Someone shared good news and his words sounded correct but empty. He told himself this was maturity. He told himself calm was better than noise. He had spent years learning how to manage himself, how to smooth edges, how to disappear without leaving. He believed this was progress, but the habit had been more then motion. It had been a door, a reminder, a quiet signal sent inward when things felt unsafe, when memories pressed too close. Touching the wrist said, you are here now, you survived that part, you can breathe without saying it out loud. Evan no longer sent the signal, and the body listened too well. It stopped answering back. Dreams changed, they lost detail, faces blurred, voices faded, places collapsed into gray shapes. He woke without images, without tension, without release. He stopped dreaming of the old house, of the narrow hallway, of the sound at night. He told himself this was good. Forgetting meant healing, that is what people say forgetting means you're free. Yet during the day something felt unfinished, like a sentence cut short. He sat at his desk and stared at the paper. The lines were clean, the pen worked, his hand did not move. He once loved to draw, not for money, not for praise, just for the feeling of lines becoming something real. Now the urge was gone, he felt neutral about it, which worried him more than sadness would have. He missed missing things, even food tasted flatter, not bad, just distant, like memory itself had lowered its volume. Evan began to notice how often he used to touch the wrist during moments of choice, when speaking up, when staying quiet, when deciding to leave or stay. It had been a compass, not a crutch, but he never named it that way. Habits are supposed to be meaningless, that is what he believed, that is what made them easy to judge. He walked past a mirror and saw the mark, faint but present, and felt nothing, no curiosity, no story attached. He turned away and the fog thickened, just enough to feel safe, just enough to feel wrong. He did not know yet that removing the habit had not removed the past, it had only removed the bridge to it, and bridges matter when you are still crossing yourself every day. One evening Evan met Liam after work. They sat in a quiet place with low light and slow music. Liam talked easily about small things, about plans, about places he wanted to see. Evan listened and nodded at the right moments. He had learned timing well. Liam stopped and looked at him and asked a simple question, "Are you okay?" Evan answered yes too quickly. The word came out smooth and empty. Liam did not argue, he only watched Evan the way people watch water to see if it moves. Evan felt exposed without knowing why. His hand lifted on its own and stopped in the air halfway to the wrist. He froze, he laughed it off. He lowered his hand and said nothing. The rest of the night felt tilted, like a picture not hung straight. When Evan went home he stood in the bathroom and studied his reflection. He touched nothing, he waited for a feeling to arrive. It did not. He remembered a younger version of himself standing in a different bathroom in a different house, practicing the same calm face, learning how to keep Thoughts quiet, learning how to stay small enough to be safe. The habit had started there not as comfort but as signal. 2 fingers meant stay here, stay now, do not leave your body when things get loud. Evan had forgotten that language on purpose. He had trained himself out of it and now he could not find the words again. The fog grew thicker, not frightening, just dull. He moved through days like furniture moved by someone else, gently, without resistance. Tasks were done, conversations ended, time passed. Clean and empty. He began to wonder if this was what people meant by healing. He began to wonder why it felt like loss. Late one night, unable to sleep, he sat on the floor and finally touched the wrist again, just once. The sensation was small but immediate, a tightness in the chest, a sharp breath. An image flashed the hallway, the sound awaiting it vanished quickly but it left warmth behind. Evan pulled his hand away, afraid of opening something he had sealed, but the body remembered faster than the mind. The habit was not asking to return, it was reminding him of something he had been before he learned how to disappear, and for the first time in weeks Evan felt present and afraid and alive all at once. Evan did not sleep after that moment. He lay in bed watching the ceiling breathe with passing cars. His hand rested on his chest, not on the wrist. He was afraid to repeat it, afraid to wake something that could not be managed. The next morning the fog was thinner, not gone, but uneven. Sounds cut sharper, light felt closer. He noticed people more, the way they shifted, the way they paused before speaking. It made him tired. By noon he realized how much effort it took to stay disconnected and how natural it felt to let the old signal work. He resisted all day. His fingers twitched each time stress appeared, each time choice hovered. He clenched his hands, he forced them still. He believed control was safety, but control had a cost. Memories pressed against the edges of thought, not clear, not whole, just pressure. By evening his head hurt in a quiet way, like holding breath too long. He met Liam again. They walked without purpose, the city slow around them. Liam spoke about nothing again, then stopped and said, "You feel closer today." Evan almost laughed. The word surprised him. He admitted nothing, he only nodded. Later alone he sat on the couch and let his hand move to the wrist deliberately. This time the contact was brief, but heavy warmth spread through his arms. His shoulders dropped. An image surfaced, not sharp, not dramatic, just a younger Evan sitting quietly, counting seconds, waiting for noise to pass. The habit had been invented to stay real, to stay inside when leaving would have been easier. Evan understood then the habit was not weakness, it was memory encoded into motion. A way the body saved itself without language. He had erased it because it looked childish, because it did not fit the version of himself he wanted to present. The fog had been protection too, just a different kind, but it protected him from himself, from feeling, from continuity. He touched the wrist again, not to punish, not to escape, just to remember. The room felt fuller, his breath deepened. The fear remained, but it shared space with clarity. Evan realized healing was not about erasing signs, it was about learning which signs still spoke truth and listening without shame. The habit did not return all at once, it returned carefully, like an old language spoken softly. Evan set rules, at first only at home, only when alone, only once a day. He smiled at his own caution but respected it. The body responded with patience. Memories surfaced in fragments, not scenes, just feelings, temperature, distance, waiting. He learned to let them pass without forcing meaning. During the day he noticed how choices felt different. He paused before agreeing, before refusing, before disappearing. The fingers sometimes lifted and he allowed it. The touch grounded him without pulling him backward. He realized the habit had never trapped him in the past, it had anchored him to the present. When the present felt unsafe, work grew louder, people asked more of him, pressure returned, but now it met resistance, not numbness. His voice shook sometimes and he let it. Liam noticed the change, not with concern but relief. They talked longer about things that mattered, about fear without naming it, about childhood without details. Evan did not explain the habit, he did not need to. The wrist no longer felt like a secret mark, it felt like a quiet companion. One evening drawing returned without announcement. He picked up a pen and lines appeared, awkward at first, then steadier, not pretty, not for display, just honest. His hand remembered what his mind had forgotten. Creation felt like breathing again. He understood then that habits are stories the body tells when words are not safe, removing them without listening erases chapters that still hold meaning. Evan no longer wanted to be smooth or empty, he wanted to be whole, even if whole meant uneven. The fog lifted slowly, not replaced by brightness but by texture, by depth, by edges that proved he was still here, still moving, still connected to who he had been before. Hiding became skill, not identity. He touched the wrist less often now, but with intention. Each time it said the same thing: you made it through, you are allowed to stay present. And Evan finally believed it. With time Evan noticed something else. The habit no longer appeared only in fear, it appeared in moments of choice, moments of truth, moments when he could either retreat or remain. He learned to listen to the timing. If the fingers moved fast it meant protect, if they moved slow it meant decide. This language grew clearer as he stopped judging it. He stopped asking if it looked normal, he stopped explaining it to himself. The body does not need permission to remember, it only needs space. Some days were Harder the fog tried to return on busy mornings, on loud evenings when expectations stacked too high. Evan felt the old urge to disappear, to smooth himself into something easy. He recognized that urge now and named it quietly, not with words but with touch. He let the wrist answer, and the answer was always grounding, never dramatic, just enough weight to stay present. People reacted differently to him now. Some leaned closer, some stepped back. He accepted both reactions. He was no longer shaped only for comfort, he was shaped for honesty. Liam once asked what changed. Evan thought about it and said, "I stopped cutting pieces away." Liam nodded, like that was enough, because it was. Creativity spread into other parts of life. Conversations deepened, pauses became real, silence instead of absence. Evan laughed more freely, and when sadness came he let it sit beside him instead of pushing it away. The habit faded again, but this time by choice, not by force. It became a tool, not a rule. He used it when needed, and trusted himself when he did not. Weeks passed and memory settled into something calm, not sharp, not buried, just integrated. The wrist no longer felt like a wound, it felt like a landmark, a reminder of where he had been and how far he had moved without leaving himself behind. Evan understood then that the past does not ask to be relived, it asks to be acknowledged. Once acknowledged, it loosens its grip and allows movement forward. He stood one evening at the same window as before, watching the city breathe. This time he knew who was watching and why, and the reflection felt familiar, not perfect but real, and that was enough. Evan no longer counted how many times he touched the wrist, because counting belonged to control, and control was not the goal. Presence was the goal. The habit had completed its work. It had reminded him who he was before hiding became automatic, before calm met absence. He woke one morning and felt steady, not excited, not afraid, just steady, the kind of steadiness that comes from continuity, from knowing your story did not break in the middle. He made breakfast slowly. He listened to the sounds of the city and felt part of them, not above, not outside. When stress appeared later that day he noticed it clearly, like weather moving, and he did not fight it, he did not numb it, he stayed with it, and it passed like weather does. Evan realized then that the habit had never needed to be erased or obeyed, it needed to be understood. It was memory in motion, a message from a past self who had done the best possible thing with limited tools. Now those tools could rest because new ones existed. Choice, awareness, gentleness. The wrist remained marked, faint but honest, a symbol without weight. Evan touched it one last time that day, not out of need but gratitude. He whispered nothing. Some things do not require words. He stepped forward into his life, carrying all versions of himself without shame, without hiding. The habit was no longer something to escape, it was proof that he had always known how to survive, and more importantly how to return to himself. And with that knowledge settled quietly inside him, Evan moved on, not away from the past but with it, integrated, complete, and finally at home in his own presence.